The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order! The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Ramblin' Ryan Rodriguez presiding. Will you all rise for the Honorable Judge Ramblin' Ryan Rodriguez?
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Spooky Justice. Today we are hearing the case of The People vs. Ticks. Ticks is a 1993 creature feature that follows a group of troubled youths on a forest retreat where they encounter giant mutated ticks and murderous marijuana-soaked hillbillies. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always, in this courtroom, films are to be considered innocent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove within a shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Robb Maynard, you're appearing on behalf of the prosecution. You may begin your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, distinguished members of the jury, and Ben, much like the creature featured in this creature feature flick, Dermacentor variabilis, also known as the American dog tick or wood tick, this movie bites. And this movie sucks. This movie sucks the very life force from you, leaving you an empty, dried up, shriveled husk of your former self. And, much like our friend the tick, the story herein is heavily bloated with unnecessary subplots and bizarre backwoods villains to the point that its relatively squishy exoskeleton is ready to burst. And yet, as bloated as this plot may be, it is a decidedly empty one, because much like Alfonso Ribeiro's film career, none of these tangential sidetracks ever intend to go anywhere. So, at the end of the day, this movie is really about nothing but big ticks, and it's barely even about that. Because, my friends, and Ben, when Clint Howard feels too good to be in your movie, then you know you've got a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maynard. Mrs. Deanna Rooney, you are representing the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, though I believe we have one gentleman of the jury. Nice to see you today. Now, as our justice has previously mentioned, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, Webster Dictionary would have you believe that to be, without a reasonable doubt, would be that this movie did something against the law, and that it had a guilty state of mind when it broke said law. Now, I implore you to consider, if you will. So I'm just so moved just hearing about bloated subplots where, truth be told, if we're actually honoring a movie, which we should with a movie such as this, we would see that instead of bloated subplots, we have a nice deft ability to not manage one, but two different storylines with a ticking time bomb at that allows us to traverse past just your general sort of monster movie. Now, as we continue through our discussions of this film, I want you to keep in mind that this is both a movie of joy, it celebrates itself, and gosh darn it, it just has fun. I mean, there's so many... This is a movie for underdogs. How many of us feel like we are not represented in cinema? Well, I'll tell you, Tix has representation for each and every one of you. Anyone listening to this, there is someone for you in here. Sure, maybe you had like a weird incident with your family member and you had to go to the woods to get over that. there's someone in there for you. You lived a rough life on the streets and no one understands you and you're afraid to let people close. Well, by golly, by the end, you're going to trust people and you're going to bring all those individuals together. You feel like you're misunderstood and you're just living in a shack alone with your little hamster. Well, you know what? You have a heart of gold. You do. You have a heart of gold because not only when your poor hamster goes missing from a heinous death by a killer mutant tick, you're going to go and investigate because you are an entrepreneur with a heart of gold. Those are not, ladies and gentlemen, this is 1993, 1994. This was not presented in cinema. It was ahead of its time. But alas, I will not get ahead of myself. This is just the opening statement. So I implore you, again, keep an open mind and really think, what is a bad movie? What really hurts the soul? And what are we even fighting about here? Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Rooney. Prosecution, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to get the obvious out of the way and discuss that this film features Alfonso Ribeiro, who, of course, we all know as Carlton from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Now, in this film, Carlton plays a street-smart tough named Daryl, but informs us that they call him Panic because he never does. You know, basically the same reason why everyone calls me Powerball Jackpot and threesomes with supermodels. You see, back in the 90s, it was very hip to give people completely sarcastic nicknames. So, they were considered true terms of endearment. Anyway, so Carlton plays this streetwise hood named Panic, and it is impossible to take him seriously at any point in the film. He starts the film out menacing Seth Green, and he goes on to talk about drive-bys happening in his neighborhood, and listen, I'm all for trying to break out of typecasting, but Tix was released at the height of Fresh Prince's popularity, so the world wasn't ready yet to see Carlton be anybody but Carlton. And it's not as if this film was sage enough to cast Carlton as a wimp pretending to be tough. He never drops this hard exterior enough to let us know it's all an act. There's a point later where Carlton's dog is killed by the ticks, and this causes Carlton to realize that the woods are dangerous and inspires him to leave the safety of the camp to trek out into the woods. Into the woods where the danger is. And when the other realizes that he's gone, one of them has the audacity to say, if he can survive in the city, he can survive out here. Stupid, no he can't. Those are distinctly different skill sets. I've survived in cities for many years, and I wouldn't last a night out in the woods exposed with mutated monster ticks everywhere.
So noted.
Would the defense care to rebut any of the comments that the prosecution has made regarding the believability of Mr. Ribeiro?
Yes, Your Honor, I would very much like to touch on that. Now, see, my understanding is of Mr. Ribeiro, as well as the other charming cast of youths, is that we're really trying to see that a bunch of troubled individuals can also be children, be wrong sometimes, learn lessons. In the instance of Mr. Alfonso, also known as Panic in this film, we realize that there's opportunities for characters who would be dubbed Panic, which would seem like a trite, easygoing, one-note character. Instead, he graces us with character turns that put Mad Max Fury Road to shame.
Objection, Your Honor. I would like for us to remember to refer to the character as Carlton, not as Alfonso Ribeiro, because everybody calls the dance doing the Carlton, not doing the Alfonso Ribeiro. So
I'm gonna sustain that, but
very good.
I don't know. Well,
Your Honor, I move that there was no Carlton, either the dance or the character present in the film.
that is true. So actually, I'm going to overrule it.
Objection, Your Honor. I'd like you to overrule your overrulement.
Nope. Overrule stands. Move on.
Thank you, Your Honor. And you're looking very dapper today, might I add.
Why, thank you.
So, as I touched on earlier, yes, children being children. We all know what that's like, right? It's so hard growing up, especially with such diverse backgrounds, and yet this is an opportunity for people to fail and rise, and that's exactly what they do in this film, and that's exactly what this film itself proves to do as well. It promises a trite, easygoing little romp, but by the end, it has heart. We see the good guys rule. The people, overcome fear, obstacles, face death a second time. Well, honestly, they even face multiple bear traps and what have you. There's a lot of things that are faced in this film, and quite frankly, I marvel, and I wonder if I would even be able to handle myself as any of these characters had.
I feel like if Carlton could survive out in the woods through this ordeal, I feel like I'm pretty confident that I can make it as well.
You're on thin ice, prosecution. His name is Mr. Ribiera.
Thank you, Your Honor.
If I may continue. Now, the entire concept of this film from the beginning is misguided. Unlike other members of the arachnid family, ticks are not any scarier the bigger you make them. When movies blow up spiders to gigantic proportion, they usually retain their startling speed, and they have the ability to ensnare us in their webs of much death, which is horrifying. When they supersize a scorpion, that allows them to capture us in their demon claws and impale us on their stingers of justice. But ticks' threats are not amplified in proportion to their size. The terror of the tick is that it's unseen, it's unheard. It latches onto you without you knowing and silently siphons your precious life fluids. This is what makes ticks a threat, their minuscule, near imperceptible nature. That and their ability to transmit disease to you, like Rocky Mountain spotted fever and tularemia and Borrelia Berg de Dorf. I can't say it, but it's Lyme disease. Anyway.
Defense, would you care to speak to the effectiveness of these creatures?
Yes, Your Honor. I can't help but feel that all of my dear colleagues' points seem rather old-fashioned to insist that we would not want to see the monster of the movie in order for it to be scary. But alas, isn't it more terrifying to see the thing that attacks you? The thing that continues to burrow into your body even after you've severed its head from its entire carcass of a body. I, sir, personally would not like a oversized tick head burrowing through my body. Would you?
No, absolutely not.
I would not, but the thing about these giant ticks is they don't really retain a lot of the qualities that we know exist in ticks. Ticks are supposed to be very tough, right? They have a tough exoskeleton. It's hard to kill a tick. Probably a lot of us know you can't even drown them. And in the movie, Tyler, Seth Green, says they're too tough to squash, right? And that's the moment where he shows Carlton how to burn them with fire. And then they spend the rest of the movie very easily squashing these giant ticks. I mean, the veterinarian kills one by stomping on it. Jerry does the same. Jerry, one of the marijuana-soaked hillbillies, does the same later. So why not allow these ticks to retain this infamous durability that you've already established?
Why? Because we've already also seen that they are able to cause crazy, psycho, forgive me, Your Honor, I'm blanking on the term, but they cause major hallucinations in those that they have bitten because they are radioactive, as it were. They've been polluted. They are not of the original ilk of, say, one mountain bear, what have you, tick. These are a completely different ilk of tick, and I don't think that it is fair to group it together with what we would consider normies who bring Lyme disease upon, well, a bunch of teenagers.
Then I follow that up, Counselor, with the question of what makes these ticks any different from being giant radioactive spiders with hallucinogen neurotoxin.
I would argue that why not? Is it fair that we only have arachnophobia to really rouse individuals to be like, oh, let's demonize just one kind of strange creature that climbs on walls? But you know what? I'm all for equal opportunity, and shame on you for limiting your tip.
But it does bring me to my next point, Your Honor, is that the ticks are total punks, and the ticks end up not even being the most dangerous antagonists in the film. Really, it's the marijuana farmers who seem to be the larger threat. You see, the woods that the ticks occupy are also home to some nefarious characters, namely dope growers. What kind of dope? Asks Peter Scolari, as if the variety of dope would really make or break his decision to stay camping in these woods. First, we have Clint Howard's character, Clint Howard, who uses experimental plant steroids on his marijuana, which is what causes the ticks to grow abnormally large in the first place. And then there are two other pot farmers, Jerry, who's sort of the hillbilly, and Sir, who strives to be more cosmopolitan. And they wind up taking the entire group of protagonists captive, and of course threatening to sodomize them, because we couldn't have 90s era rednecks without the threat of sodomy. Anyway, so Jerry and Sir are even more antagonists than the ticks themselves. The ticks only managed to get Carlton's dog. And sure, yes, they also get Clint Howard, but to be fair, Clint got his ass snatched up in his own bear trap, so he was relatively immobilized to begin with. Besides that, it isn't until the end when Sir is mauled to death by the really, really gigantic tick. He's like the size of a schnauzer. But all the other deaths in the film are at the hands of Jerry and Sir. They kill Sheriff Rance Howard. They shoot and fatally wound Carlton. In fact, Carlton is really the only good guy who dies in this movie, besides his dog, who dies in his arms, which I think is kind of screwed up that Carlton's the only one who dies. Like, how 90s horror movie is that? But ultimately, the ticks failed to really present much of a threat. I mean, they get locked out of a cabin for like 15 minutes. And you see, even if they do get you, they're apparently easy to rip off. And if you like lightly chuck them a few feet away, they're just like gone forever.
So, prosecution, do you believe that this is a failure of the film to be named ticks, and yet have the central villains not necessarily be the ticks?
Are you asking me, prosecution?
Yes.
Oh, yes, I think that's what I just said.
No, I just want to clarify.
The movie's named Ticks, but really the threat and danger that the characters face really isn't so much from the ticks, but from the farmers. If anything, the ticks are just an offshoot of the farmers' experimental marijuana growing.
Defense, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, Your Honor. I just wonder if the prosecution has heard of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, a Prometheus story, because I feel like we are treading on more gothic sensibilities here. That mankind is the monster in the movie, and it takes the ticks for us to realize that. So,
I'm tired of mankind being the monster, Your Honor. When is the monster going to be the monster?
Well, if you've taken any of those intro to lit classes at any community college, they could tell you that there is no such thing.
Having taken two myself, I can confirm this. Prosecution, would you like to continue with your next argument?
Your Honor, you're the real monster. I'll tell you that. I want to talk about a couple of these bloated subplots before I pass it off to my colleague. When we're introduced to Seth Green's character Tyler at the beginning of the movie, he has a sort of psychotropic episode, and we discover that he suffers from like PTSD. He calls it a panic disorder. After some vague experience he had in the woods, it's not like super fleshed out. The film never really tells us exactly what happens. We just know that he now has some sort of panic disorder, but only because the film tells us, because we never really see him suffer from it again throughout the rest of the movie. I mean, he never has like any real mental breakdown. I mean, he complains about a dizzy spell later, but it's never relevant to the ticks, or, he never ends up freaking out during any of these giant tick attacks, which just seems like perfect timing to have a panic attack when you're being attacked by giant ticks. But it's almost like the writer forgot that was something Seth Green was supposed to do.
Defense, any rebuttal to this?
Yes, Your Honor. As far as the panic disorder, it was established in the film they established it not only by mentioning it, but also showing in flashback that it was from being abandoned by his father in the woods. So therefore, he was being submitted to this outing as immersion therapy. And might I add, is not a bloated subject in my understanding, being someone also who is oftentimes very overly panicked over the most minute of things, including ticks. Is that... Sorry, I'm being attacked by a kitten right now. Please forgive me.
Get that cat out of here.
Oh, God. But it shows that we can be flawed individuals and we can rise to the occasion. He showed that he had the makings to be an outstanding leader of sorts, a team player at that. And he shows initially in incremental amounts that his knowledge of ticks, which is established with as, we'll call him Alfonso because I have respect for our fair actor in this film. And then all the way to knowing what to do, taking control of the situation, physically driving the van away with all the other protagonists who have survived the ordeal. He's a man transformed. It's a great, like, he is our A story in this film.
I'd like to object to that. I don't see the transformation. It's like he has panic attacks before he goes to the woods. He goes to the woods and he never really seems to have any other panic attacks after that. And to me, there isn't growth there. It's just a sudden jump. You know, like if he showed some more fear and some trepidation when he first got there, if he failed to help Melissa get the giant tick off her back initially, you know, if there was some hesitation, I could see more growth like that, then I would give that some credit.
Oh, I would have to rebut in saying that there was hesitation in helping Melissa with the tick on her back, as some would argue that it took an egregious amount of time for him to assist her, in that there was a lot of repetitive video, which I would normally abstain from mentioning in such a case as this. But to defend the case of this gentleman having actual growth, indeed, there was trepidation, and it was eventually overcome to a heroic level, I might say.
And Your Honor, I'd like to bring up the repetitive use of video, if I may.
It is acknowledged.
And also, as we mentioned that attack, I did notice there's a horrible editing jump cut where, like, Seth Green's coming down the like blanket rope they built, and Rome like jumps into the van, and as Rome is diving into the van, he's already in the front seat starting it. Like, so there's like somehow he managed to jump and like, immediately get through that door. It's like a very odd cut. I had to watch a couple of times.
Your Honor, sometimes there's just so much love you gotta pack into 85 minutes.
And the other subplot I want to mention is about Dina Day-Ritt's character Kelly, who spends most of the movie never saying a word until she finally does and reveals that after she was raped, she had nothing to say. It's really, really heavy. And it's very possible some of you didn't even notice this because it's just sort of dropped in conversation casually, brushed over, and never capitalized on at all later in the film. Kelly uses a fishing pole a couple of times because we've established she knows how to fish, but like that's never brought up again. And it's just very jarring. It comes out of nowhere. And because the character's so extremely tertiary, why introduce such a heavy backstory for basically a background character like this? So to me, both of these ideas could have been interesting if they were further fleshed out and became relevant to anything, but instead they're just kind of dropped in and forgotten.
I would like to hear the defense's opinion on the heavy backstory for this tertiary character.
Yes, Your Honor. I would attribute that to a bit of economy. I'm sure on the cutting room floor, unfortunately, a lot of more, dare I say, like more elaborate conversations would have gone on about this subject. But the point that they had to make was to get Melissa on board with seeing that Holly is not the enemy here, that actually she does a lot of good for all of the team protagonists in this film. We needed her to get on board, and I feel like Dee did a phenomenal job by like revealing something that she probably didn't want to, but she understood that it was necessary for Melissa to get there emotionally. Is it manipulative? We can never know, because unfortunately this film was only 85 minutes long, and I wish it was 97.
84 minutes too long. And as my final point, I would like to point out that the budget for this film was $1 million. It was a direct-to-video release, and it was $1 million in 1993, which, according to my inflation calculator, is $64 billion in today's money, making it the most expensive film ever produced. And with that, I rest my case.
That's an interesting thing to end on. Defense, I now cede the floor to you.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I would like to touch on that point of the budget. It's not every day that everyone's able to dream that big to spend $9,780 whatever have you dollars on Alfonso Ribeira, taking up 90% of your budget because you really want to see this movie made because it has stories that it needs to tell. And that's what this movie is. This is the movie where Duck Lips began. This is a gang's all here that rivals Hannah and her sisters. They don't waste time, though. They don't bloat things. They get to the heart of things because they know you're busy. But they also know that you like to be scared. It's a beautiful marriage of heart and fright. And Seth Green is out there out acting a whole cast like an Olympian. When do you ever get to see Seth Green shine like this? And you have like a whole bunch of different like cultural representation, even down to our dear beloved BBC radio playing bear trap tripping in Clint Howard, who not only tripped in one bear trap, but you'll recall he tripped in a second one and then had his face and mouth explode from having an infestation of tick eggs fall into his mouth. But that's not all. Your Honor.
I was going to say, the crazy thing about that is Clint Howard did not even know they were making a movie.
All the more reason to love this. You have a man who's just committed to existing. How else do you film? How dare you tell me? Well, let's really get down to the bones of it. This film is about underdogs. And I want you, the jury, to define yourselves as a jury that wishes to judge from a place of love, of what you enjoy, what brings you to cinema, time and again, no matter what, instead of being of the ilk that is a jury that perhaps judges from a plate of hate, and that's how they define themselves as cinemateurs, if you will. So I implore you, here's a movie that poses questions you wouldn't have even thought to ask until inspired by ticks. Your Honor, gentleman of the jury.
Thank you.
I rest my case.
Prosecution, do you want to speak to any of those points before we wrap up?
I think spending, $63.5 billion on Carlton is ridiculous.
Right, you are on thin ice, mister.
What?
Mr. Ribeiro.
But if I can touch on any, final point, it would be, the cast and crew of this film is tremendous, right? I mean, you've got the young Seth Green, Amy Dolenz, Peter Scolari, Rance Howard, who is best known for being the father of Clint Howard, and some other guy, the aforementioned Carlton, who we discussed.
Okay, now you're just doing it to piss me off.
And
we're in contempt, Your Honor.
And then if you look at behind the scenes, you've got the director Tony Randall, who did Hellbound, Hellraiser 2,
and is not the guy from The Odd Couple.
Is not the guy from The Odd Couple. He did produce Godzilla 1985 for New Line Cinema, though.
Not bad.
The writer Brent V. Friedman wrote Prehysteria 2 and 3, as well as Mortal Kombat Annihilation. For music, you got Christopher Stone, who did Walker, Texas Ranger. The production design, Anton Tremblay done tons of stuff like Army of Darkness. And then, of course, obviously you've got Doug Beswick on effects, and he did, Aliens, Evil Dead 2. And Greg Nicotero from Walking Dead did the makeup too. So it's a heck of a cast and crew, and I certainly think the effects are great, but the story is just so strange. But if the defense would like to talk any more about maybe this waste of a crew that we've assembled and didn't get to capitalize on.
Thank you very much. I do believe that it is a phenomenal crew, and I believe that everyone on it enjoyed a great, though marginal, payday. But more than that, this is the kind of project you take when you just get excited. I know that we're all stuck in quarantine times where we forget what it's like to take a job out of joy, but there's a purity to this. When Brian Usna even produced this project while he was busy on multiple other projects that very same year, be it Return of the Living Dead 3, which, truth be told, I almost thought that we would possibly discuss as a film to deliver it.
One day. We've done the second one.
Three is of an ilk of its own. I believe I've watched it 9 times and I haven't made it all the way through in one go.
Oh, wow.
But that said, we had a lot of people who were working on multiple projects at the same time. This was a, yeah, sure, this sounds fun project. And don't we want to say yes to that? Because honestly, that's most of the films that we're kind of cheering for to come out these days. Because there's too many polished projects that are just like checking all the boxes of like, okay, here's the inciting incident, and here's the turn here, and then, oh, like, we want to be surprised, and I was surprised the entire time watching this film. The first half of this film, I will admit, I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? This movie is guilty as all hell, but by God, it got its shit together by the end. It figured out that what it was, and sometimes we don't have the time or the resources to really figure out what we are till the very end. And you know what? It got there.
So it's a redemption story, ultimately.
Absolutely.
It redeemed itself?
What's not to love about the meta experience of a film, god damn it.
Both the prosecution and defense have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Prosecution, you may begin.
Your Honor, distinguished members of the jury, and Ben, it seems that our time here together has finally ticked away. I have gone through my list of reasons why this film is guilty and carefully ticked off each and every one of them, from Carlton to Clint to the incessant click-clack of little ticky toes. Hopefully they have brought your estimation of this film down a tick. All that remains now is for you to enter that deliberation room, tick the box next to guilty, and go on home and enjoy some Tic Tacs. Yes, that's the ticket. You must find this film guilty, my friends, and Ben, because, without a doubt, 1993's Ticks truly ticked me off. Thank you.
Finn, Ice. Defense, you may present your closing argument.
Thank you. Esteemed colleagues of this room. Benjamin, may I?
Absolutely.
We have heard the prosecution slander what could be one of the purest films to come out in 1993/1994. This is a movie that came from love. A cast and crew just out there to have fun. It shows you amazing practical effects. The skittering of amazing practical ticks that actually made you squeal like a little piggy or a child, being whatever you decide to imbue upon yourself there. There's no judgment, but I want to judge you in your judgment of this film. Not harshly, but with love, because this film is love. Everyone that worked on this film loved it, and by God, the people that eventually made it to the end of this film loved it just the same. It's a film of redemption, hope, fear, and love. And if you can't see that, well, I don't want to live in a world where this is wrong. So, thank you, everyone. I'm going to go stare at a cat. I rest my case.
Thank you, defense. Members of the jury, Mr. Schlender, Mr. Haslar, Mr. Rated R. Ryan Rodriguez, you have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
So, let's start clockwise for a change. Ben, what are you thinking?
Passionate arguments made by great counselors and Robb. I happen to know that Miss Rooney was court appointed for this, but she really made me believe that she did like this movie, which I am sympathetic to the argument of just taking a kind of lame project and doing it just because you enjoy doing the project. You know, you enjoy the art of making movies, and you have someone who just wants to, drive it to the finish line. I've volunteered my time for that sort of thing numerous times. So I do get that. But man, this movie, it's just, it fits right in with like bats and the killer shrews and all that thing where you just take an animal and okay, let's make it scary with 1 million of them. If you have like a lot of people, writing this exact same script, like, hey, write a script about a whole bunch of killer ticks. I'm betting you get a lot of the same story beats as we would have seen in this film,
including the marijuana-soaked hillbillies.
Maybe not that, but it would have been something. Like the fact that it was marijuana in particular seemed like it was like really aiming for the niche that it's in,
What do you mean by that? I mean, because it's the 90s, man.
It's like a pop film, for like stoners to be like, look at that,
But it's a very common exploitation trope of we got to have something winking in there. So if we say, hey, it's the pot, we have the steroid in the pot, then you kind of have like this meta reference in there, but they don't really do anything with it.
They don't, no. Just the fact that, it's just there.
Yeah.
I also like the prosecution's argument that like the ticks, they didn't get scarier to me the bigger they got. They felt like very animatronic to me. It seemed like there was a better monster they could have picked, like something unseen. Like the durability would have been good if it was like borderline invincible, no matter, like you drop a truck on this thing and it's not dying. That would have been at least scarier.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with the ticks is that they're basically face huggers, and they don't really do much other than that. And they even have the little, I guess we have to call it an orifice that sticks to people. But other than like kind of like the protective shell and I guess some ooze, it's really not that much different.
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the better points that the prosecution brought up, is that the ticks, they just don't really act like ticks. I mean, ticks don't dig in and crawl around under your skin, that was very, it was strange. I think I understand why you would pick ticks, just because, they're easy to explode, like from a movie making point of view, right?
Bats has been done, we're sort of out of like bloodsuckers as animals.
You have a list of creatures, and eventually you're going to get down to ticks.
Yeah, and the
too bad we didn't get wallabies and aardvarks. That's coming next.
I mean, because the things that do make ticks scary, are like they said, it's like, they sit on leaves all day, and then they jump on you, or they get on your dog and they get on you, or something. I mean, like that's why there was the huge fire at the end. I think it's realized, like, like ticks aren't hunting anything. We have to they need to be moving for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so the ticks were interesting, but the thing with movies like these, and as you are gentlemen of cinema and culture like I am, you're familiar with the term hacker. You have these kind of hacker films out there, and so it's almost to the point where you have that understanding going in. So the fact that they're ticks is almost inconsequential, because it really could have been anything, and it's just a matter of like, is it entertaining and fun? And does it kind of meet the brief for what you'd want from a creature feature? In this case, you get to see how the creatures are demonstrably dangerous. You get those neat practical effects. They get to burst and explode, and I think that counts. I think that counts for a lot in a movie that's made, in the 90s for $1 million back then, and then,
oh, wait, for the audience out there, can you explain the term hacker?
Well, hacker is
coined by his dad. We're not sure. We're looking into it.
Yeah, it's. I
just wanted to throw you. That's all.
No, I know. I got to talk to my father about that. Like I said, it's like what the Supreme Court said about pornography. Like, I can't define it, but I'll know it when I see it. All right.
And I know it when I see it.
We know.
Does he ever?
All right. So everyone, we're not going to Ryan's blog today, but I did kind of like the where the defense was coming from too, with like the characters, being underdogs. Like it had this very 90s sensibility to it that it felt more organic coming from that time. I think if you were to try to recreate something like that today, it would feel very prepackaged and sterile.
It doesn't here.
I don't think it feels very 90s here though, and maybe that's just a bit of nostalgia rubbing off, but like that was kind of the formula back then, and I don't think it's really something you can capture nowadays as well. So I think when she was talking about how you wouldn't really be able to do a movie like this today. I think that's a fair point worthy of consideration.
Well, this is really before like irony infected horror. Back when it was kind of like we could do a creature feature like this and have it be relatively sincere. Like there's jokes in it.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, the exploitation element is definitely kind of a big, an elbow in your ribs, but for the most part, it's telling a story about these characters surviving these ticks. Whether or not it's good at that is a different thing, but I don't think it's doing that in a parody-like manner.
No, I don't think it is. Frogs was done straight face. Bats was done straight face, sort of.
Alligator. I mean, there's a bunch of creature features.
Alligator's like a satire, but that's close.
Well, close,
like
yeah.
Slugs, stuff like that.
No, there's definitely a few of them. Yeah, so I'm leaning towards not guilty right now. That's where my heart is. I won't necessarily lock it in, but that's definitely where I'm leaning towards, with a lot of caveats attached to it, like I don't think this movie could stand up to a lot of really great movies, but I don't think I can sit here and tell you that today, something like this is a movie you see.
You're saying this is better than Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, sir?
I feel very comfortable saying
yes.
It's better than The Spirits Within. Hey, get out of here.
Yeah, say about equal.
About equal. I mean, maybe. Well, see, though, I have a soft spot for these kind of creature features, for these hackers, if you will, and I think we established that you will. So that's where
these were the kind of movies that I was afraid to watch with my friends when I was growing up.
Why is
because
that?
I was a real puss.
Really?
So yeah,
Over this?
So, yeah, I know it's completely out of left field. But even something like
this.
Did
you see the animatronic click things of the lights?
That's the thing. Even though this is not remotely scary or realistic, I would have looked at this and thought, no, I'm going to jump at least like 2 or 3 times. I can't do this. But
yeah, see, I lived for these kind of movies when I was a kid. I loved anything that had a creature
I did
or something
too.
like that.
I had bad taste as a kid. I may still have bad taste now, though.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I just got a real soft spot for these kind of movies. And then I guess it's a fair question. Are there, can it still be bad? Something we talk about a lot in this court, so bad it's entertaining or anything like that. But I think this movie just had a level of that 90s style sincerity, that resonates with chumps like me, and so that's why I can't sit here and tell you it's a bad movie.
Yeah. I appreciate the production elements. I really like the animatronic effects, especially the super tick at the end of the film that kind of looks like that
just grows out of nowhere.
Yeah, but it looks specifically like the lava bug at Journey to the Center of the Earth in Tokyo Disney Sea, and I found that incredibly fascinating. So the production element I really enjoy. On the negative side, 30 minutes after I watched it, I forgot about 80% of it.
I am totally with you. As they were talking about it, I was like, that was a thing, wasn't it? I forgot about that.
I remembered the lava bug, and I remembered the redneck kneeling on Alfonso Ribeiro's neck and getting really pissed off about it.
And I remember they call me Panic because I never do, because that line is poetry.
How can you forget, though, when the hillbillies are running away? The weed, when it's all burned.
But so what are we? We know what Dylan's gone, but Ben.
Well, they call me votes innocent because I never do, so I'm going guilty.
And Dylan, you're innocent, right?
I am not guilty.
Okay. Well, since that's your choice, I'm gonna go guilty.
All right, then we have a verdict. Let's go tell the judge.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
Your Honor, we have. In the case of the People versus Ticks, we find the defendant guilty.
All right! Justice!
Forgot what side he was on for a second.
Well, it's partially disappointed.
The verdict is so rendered. I sentence Ticks to death by whatever the cinematic equivalent of Lyme disease is, plus time served. Court is adjourned.
This is Benderson Cooper reporting to you live from outside the Reels of Justice. Mrs. Rooney, would you care to share your thoughts on the jury's verdict today?
Oh, yes, Benjamin. It It's a shame that the verdict came as it did, but also I'm relieved that I was not tasked with defending anyone's life. So I feel like people are going to feel the way they do, and that's part of the beauty of art, is that it's completely subjective. I respect the time and thought that the jury put into this decision. I find it unfortunate that they couldn't see it another way, but so it goes.
You were court appointed for this. Do you actually believe the film is innocent?
I unfortunately can't comment at this time.
Very well. Thank you. And here comes Mr. Robb Maynard. Excuse me, could we get a word on how you feel about today's verdict, sir?
Well, Benderson, I'm absolutely tickled pink by this verdict. Like the proverbial game of tic-tac-toe, I have gotten 3 in a row and been found victorious. In fact, I've heard they're now preparing to hold a ticker-take parade in my honor. Truly a glorious day.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Maynard. And let's go back to the studio for a post-trial analysis.
Right, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was a very good trial.
A very
Deanna,
good case.
You were robbed.
I figured when logic doesn't work, you fight with passion, baby.
That is true. That does usually work here.
Old Ben voting innocent here.
I was more surprised by Ryan. I thought Ryan would have swayed it to not guilty because of the production value, which was excellent. Like, all the effects are awesome.
Yeah, there's one shot where I think it's a nurse like pulls the tick off and then it scurries across the floor. That looks really good. It actually looks like Thing in the Addams Family movie, the first one, which is like a kind of a marvel of a practical effect, and it really is quite good.
I also had slight, I say that with trepidation, but vibes of actual Carpenter's The Thing too, just like where it's like that whole sequence at the vet was phenomenal. Like that was probably the best part of the entire movie.
Yeah, and she's pulling out like the postulating stuff and kind of definitely. There's kind of there's an element of like of kind of mild body horror to it, and there is kind of like a supernatural element to it as well.
Yeah, and everything Clint Howard does it.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Everything Clint Howard does is great too. Like I love when he's got the pustule on his face and he goes, "I'm disgusting."
Shoot me!
I was only disappointed that
they were making a movie.
I did not know they were making a movie.
Oh god!
He was like 3 degrees away from Ice Cream Man, but if he only pushed it a little further, oh man, it would have been great.
And the music is pretty good in this too. So I feel like and a lot of the performances aren't bad. There's some, like I said, there's weird casting choices for Alfonso, but
I stand by it's forgettable though. Like if we quizzed any one of us here like a month from now, like on various
we don't remember the same kind of things, Ben. I'm never gonna forget ticks.
I mean, you'll remember it exists, but if I say why did Clint Howard want the girl to shoot him? Like, will you remember that she wanted that?
Out of his face, and he's Clint Howard. You could at least have asked a hard question.
Yeah, I think with movies like this, though, it's like they have a specific objective in mind. It was made for $1 million. It was direct to video. It was in like the early 90s. I feel it hit the objectives it was going for. Like it didn't try to do anything more than it should have. It could have tightened up some of the writing and stuff like that. I totally understand it, but I don't feel it's a film that was like too big for its britches.
No, they just wanted to make a monster movie, and they succeeded.
It was just a pretty decent creature feature. There'd be definitely better ones out there. I would be hard pressed to say this is the worst, but I don't know what I'd say the worst creature feature is.
And that's why I said I was disappointed, because I don't think this movie deserved to be guilty, but I wasn't on the jury.
I stand by it.
I don't remember most of it. I just don't.
I mean, I just think you guys have bad memories. Have you guys been tested? Have you done the woman, man, TV, camera?
I take my supplements every day, sir.
Woman, man, person, TV, camera. Have you done that?
I failed that one, but everybody.
Have you just looked around the room and started naming things at like a list, which is what I like to do.
Air conditioner.
So, Deanna, what is keeping you?
Microphone.
What is keeping? Thank you. Deanna, what is keeping you busy in these unprecedented times?
Well, it's been mostly just finding the dumbest, most arduous things to keep myself entertained because
That's us.
I love
We thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure. I love a lot of effort with little payoff every time. I started lockdown by doing like a minute of King Lear a day on Instagram, and then when it kind of came to about like the 3-ish week mark, and they pretty much let it be known that it was not ending anytime soon, I'm like, what am I doing to myself? So I stopped that, and now I'm just doing a lot of just random dumb videos. I've been slowly doing some character stuff for my beloved friend Jim over at Cinematic Void. We're
cool.
going to be doing something for what is it, Hack-O-Lantern coming up, so that's going to be fun.
Ooh,
Nice.
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Beyond that, just the same old hustle as everyone else. But yeah,
That's
how about
cool,
you
that's
guys
cool.
besides this beautiful, glorious, amazing
You're
podcast?
looking at it.
Yeah, this is a lot of what keeps us busy, at least for me.
And
Ryan's
my
got 2
beautiful
podcasts.
children.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we squeeze in some times for your kids too, a little bit.
My podcasts are my children.
Yes, we know, right?
I neglect them just as much as I should.
Now, I think it's time to talk about the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Deanna, you are featured in a very popular program, which is a personal favorite of many of us here.
Oh.
And that show is, of course, Gary Busey Pet Judge.
Yes.
Now I want to know everything there is to know about how this show is produced. Like when they ask you on, do they give you a script, or they just give you a scenario and you guys improv?
It's about I'd say about like 88% improvised. They give you like some bullet points, but then it's just. And the biggest thing with that project was they're like, listen, Mr. Busey is enough production value in and of himself. You guys have to be the straight men. So it was really interesting. It was the first time trying to be reasonable while doing improv. But no, it was phenomenal, and it's like he was so present for it, and like I'm trying to think of because at first I was a little nervous doing it just because, you know, it's like he's a wonderful man who's like suffered, you know, some physical ailments, and I wasn't sure what it was going to be like, but they were very respectful the entire time filming the project, so it was really lovely.
All right, that's awesome. And for people who don't know, if you haven't seen Gary Busey Pet Judge, it's not too different from our courtroom, where they do a mock trial, and Gary Busey is the judge, and usually it's a pet-related dispute or an animal-related dispute, and kind of like the People's Court, 2 people come in and they share their side, and Gary doles out pet justice, which we love and appreciate, and that's on Amazon Prime right now.
It is. It really turned out amazing. Like we didn't know we had no idea what we made when we made it.
How long did it take to record like the trial? Because I know it's only about 15 minutes showtime. So how long was it record time?
I think they shot all episodes in 2 to 3 days.
Okay.
Wow.
It was all one take.
That's what I was figuring, is that you guys did a straight up trial and then edited it down to the best parts.
Oh yeah, which
right.
Yeah, that was like it was. Well, you know, anyone that's done very limited budget productions, it's like you never know that you have one take until you're in it, and you're like, oh no, this is it.
This is it.
Well, let's hope they can do something with what I did, and then Ian Abramson is he does wrap up at the end, and he's phenomenal. He just brought a whole nother layer of like just talent and credibility to the project. He was just incredible to work with.
We love him. He kind of does the post-trial interviews like we do when we're outside the courtroom with Benderson Cooper.
I keep hoping you'll save me in editing, though, and you never do.
There's not much to save, Ben. I mean,
you can chop it up and make me say different things. Just make it work, man.
Pretty great. And also, of course, you were featured on the latest season of Mystery Science Theater 3000 as Dr. Donna St. Phoebes and Bonehead number 3, who's my favorite Bonehead.
Aw, shucks, guys.
You were Bonehead number 3? Oh my god, that's excellent. That's my favorite Bonehead too.
That's the only female Bonehead. I think they like referred to it on the call sheet as Bonita. I was like, oh no.
No.
Bonita. And I know you did a tour too with them, which I saw and was wonderful. But
yes,
grueling,
I
know.
Yeah, you were great in that tour, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. The tour was incredible. I mean, like shooting the film or the TV show was great, but that tour was that was so much fun.
It took more time for sure than filming the show, right?
Yeah, truth be told, I wish that we had done the tour before we filmed the TV show, because it's like it was only on tour that I really figured out the character, because again, that was a very quick turnaround where it's like you got a take, maybe 2 tops, and that was it. So you're like, oh, okay, all right.
Oh yeah.
The fact that I was kind of tripping over myself talking to Patton Oswalt on set, that's usable. You don't care? Okay, so yeah.
And that had to be weird sequentially because the season takes place after the tour.
Yeah, that's the way that Joel writes, is like he has everything figured out. So he was just like, yeah, man, like once we do this, it's gonna
yeah.
Joel.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite episode of the return, or even an old classic favorite episode? Do you have a favorite episode period?
I'll be honest, like I love so many of them, but my favorite ones are all like for sentimental reasons, where it's like for whatever reason, EGOT was the one I always watched with my older brother.
It's a great one.
So it's like, I mean, for however long since that came out, we were always just like snort giggling over like Cabbage Patch Face Elvis and like using that. I was like, what are you talking about?
Watching out for snakes.
Oh yeah,
it's easily a top 10 for me.
Yeah, but like Mr. B Natural is incredible, and like it's just there's so many. I don't know. I can't pick one.
Have you cosplayed as Mr. B Natural? I'm trying to.
Oh no! Like it was like always too like. I'm already in trouble with the fact that, like, I have to walk around with a photo or IMDb thing for any time I dress up for anything for Halloween. Like, was it one year my husband and I dressed up as Chainsaw and Dave from summer school? That's explaining to literally every person that interacted with us.
I wouldn't have gotten that. But I feel that because
Toby Hooper's name is Tobey Hooper, then they would have gotten it.
Ah. My bad.
Too yeah, I have that same problem. If I pick costumes, it's always something super esoteric. Like if I'm at Comic-Con, I'm like I'm Burt Reynolds from SNL Celebrity Jeopardy. Like so.
So I had
my mom are like, are you Lex Luthor? Are you the Kingpin? Are you Mr. Clean? And I'm just give up.
It's not dressed up as anything.
I know. I just stepped outside.
Yeah, exactly.
That's strange because whenever I dress up, I just get that man staring at us again.
Hey, you in the bushes. Thanks.
Stop
Ryan.
in the bushes.
Don't give away my approach, Rob. Jeez.
Horrible. And the show's canceled. So, Deanna, we always ask for suggestions of movies that we think people should see. And so if you have a suggestion of like a horror movie or spooky movie or Halloween type movie that you think people should check out this month.
Oh man. Well, one thing I would implore people to do is if you haven't seen Halloween 3, give it a shot. I know it has nothing to do with Michael Myers, but it doesn't matter. It's an incredible anthology movie. Like it's incredible. It's really fun. It's very stupid. It's perfect for watching like a movie a night sort of thing. It fits in the repertoire of anything you have planned for yourself for Halloween. But I want to implore people to look at some of the new stuff that's going to be coming out via Beyond Fest this year. I'm very excited for Saint Maud. It looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right, so tell me more about that. What is that about? I don't know anything about it. So.
I'll be honest, I'm going in mostly cold. I watched the trailer, and then after that, when I realized, I'm like, oh, that looks cool. Like, I honestly, ever since the movie Moon, I've tried to abstain from reading or watching anything, but I happened to see that trailer, and it looks really good.
Yeah, I've only seen the poster, and it looks amazing. And it's A24, so it has to be good.
I agree. Almost anything. We were just watching something that was got a bad rap, and then I saw A24 in the beginning. I'm like, well, it's A24. How bad can it be?
Tusk.
It was Tusk. Yes, Tusk came on and it was
Oh,
A24.
Lord.
I'm like, how bad can it be?
Well, we'll find out.
Right. Like, I feel like they
This
learned
airs
their lesson
after
after it
Tusk.
comes at night, right? Like they know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was them.
It's like,
Yep.
oh, we do need a third act in our movies.
I watched What Comes at Night like shortly after the quarantine started, and I had no idea it was going to be themed that way. So it was.
It hits your brain
very
now, like
interesting
anything that has like a virus in it or something like that. You're just, oh, that's not how you should do it. Nope, they're touching each other. No, shouldn't do it.
Oh yeah. Well, that movie actually didn't do a bad job. They were like super wearing suits and stuff like that.
Don't watch The Lighthouse in quarantine. That will get to you. Ooh.
Oh, I don't know. I
Yeah.
watched The Lighthouse before, but I would watch The Lighthouse anytime, pretty much anytime.
Oh boy.
So good.
Yeah, I really like it. All right, so who is our judge?
Ryan.
Rock and rollin' Ryan Rodriguez. What's your recommendation? Recommending Ryan Rodriguez. What's your recommendation for this week?
God, I gotta make a list of all these 20,000 nicknames. My spooky recommendation is a fantastically offbeat experimental horror film from Amy Seimetz called She Dies Tomorrow.
Ooh.
Ooh.
It somehow manages to incorporate practically every anxiety attack and existential panic spiral that I've had in 2020 and kind of synthesize them into
That's a
one
long
cinematic
movie.
experience.
There's like 5,000 of them? Or?
Yeah, I've lost count actually. But
One
it does
for
all
each
this, and it still manages to make me laugh at times. And it's not streaming for free anywhere, but you should support independent filmmakers anyway and buy it.
Ooh.
All right, what was it called again? Give me it.
She Dies Tomorrow.
That's a
Nice,
great
Mark.
name. It just like sets up everything you want to know, like just in a title.
Great name, even better movie.
And she filmed that all in her house, right?
Sorry?
I believe I read, like, didn't she, like, film the entire film in her own house?
Yes, she did. And she used her entire salary from Pet Sematary to shoot it.
Love it.
Ooh.
Yeah, she's amazing. I love Amy Seimetz.
The new
Awesome.
Pet Cemetery.
Yes, the new one.
Dylan, what do you got for a recommendation?
Oh, I'm excited for this one. Tonight, I'm recommending my dear mother's favorite Halloween movie, Halloween Town. It came out in 1998. It's a family comedy that stars the late Debbie Reynolds and follows a family trying to stop the forces of evil from taking over Halloween Town, possibly the world. I haven't seen it in a while, but it's a fun one, great for the whole family.
They live in
Well,
Halloween Town?
Well, no, the kids sneak into Halloween Town. Debbie Reynolds lives in Halloween Town. It's a whole thing. You got to watch the movie to find out. You know,
What's your
Yeah, but
verdict on
today-
Halloween Town 2?
is that one Caliban's Revenge, or is that the third one?
I think the third one is Return to Halloween Town. I'm not sure.
Well, they all have their own charm and merit, but the
Third
first
one,
one's
you
the
return
one
to
you're
it,
really
and
gonna-
you don't in the
Yeah.
second one?
Well, thanks for spoiling the first one by telling us there's a sequel, Ryan.
I'm sorry.
Now we know.
Now I know
the forces
Halloween
of
Town
evil
doesn't
don't
get
win.
blown up or something. Jeez.
But you know, it's interesting though. It is a big trilogy, and they use the same actors, and you watch them grow up, and it's kind of like the same idea, like behind Harry Potter.
Oh, sure.
Like they're growing up, learning their powers and things like that. You know, it's pretty cool.
It's kind of the nice thing about like Disney Channel series and the series of movies is that they often cast kids and then they kind of let them grow up with the movies.
Yeah, exactly. And this is definitely no exception.
And then their minds melt after the series is done.
I don't know what they're doing. And one of the characters, the boy in there, there's
The boy.
three grandkids, right? It's two granddaughters and one grandson. The grandson is also named Dylan, and he's a little nerd like I was back in 1998 too.
Yeah.
Was.
Well, now I'm a giant nerd.
Ben, what's your recommendation?
Going off the theme of horror movies about radioactive beasts, and since I'm also recommending a series of J-horror films, I'm going to recommend a little-known film. Maybe you've heard about it. Godzilla, or Gojira, if you prefer. While its sequels I wouldn't really define as horror, the first movie, I would argue, does. It plays very heavily into the fears of Japan at that time with the atomic bomb. It's fantastic. How many films can you say inspired its own subgenre? I've run into quite a few people out there who haven't seen this essential film, and if you are one of them, fix that this Halloween. I implore you.
Yeah,
Never
definitely watch
heard of
Gojira. Watch the original, the Japanese one. Just watch it with subtitles. It's worth it.
Yes. Do not watch the Raymond Burr one first. Watch
You can.
Gojira.
I grew up with the Raymond Burr one. I love the Raymond Burr one, but
The other one's better.
The other one is better.
The other one's a
It
complete
doesn't-
movie.
Agreed. Yeah. but definitely go ahead and watch that and just read the subtitles. So for my recommendation, finally, I'm getting to Ernest Scared Stupid. Quintessential Halloween viewing.
Comes to this.
Gather around the kiddies, bring everybody in. The whole family's ready for Ernest Scared Stupid. It's funny. It's I think it's scary. I think it's actually a scary movie. You know, the troll or what have you, whatever he is, he's scary. And he turns kids into wood. It's like a reverse Pinocchio thing, and it's horrifying. So and you go watch it. Watch it. What else is there to say? Ernest Scared Stupid.
The only reason it took so long to get to this is because we didn't start this podcast in October.
That's true. Well, you banned me from recommending Ernest movies, which was not fair. I know, isn't that?
I rule with an iron fist.
It's the importance of being earnest.
We banned you from recommending Ernest Rides Again.
I do recommend Ernest Rides Again, though.
I knew you would, and that's why we had to kibosh it.
He rides that cannon for like a half hour against physics.
That's the again.
It's so sexual, though. The symbolism, the phallic nature of the cannon.
Jesus.
Read Robb's book, Deconstructing the Ernest Movies, coming out soon.
Or just read his Medium blog.
And with that, we're all at a show. Deanna, thank you so much for coming on with us and arguing movies with us.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for, I did tell you guys to give me a challenge, and you certainly did.
You did. You asked me to pick a scary movie that was streaming, and I did some searches. And this was like number 1 worst on some list I found. And I saw like the cast, and I'm like, how bad can this be? And, I watched it. I didn't even think it was that bad, but I knew it would be a challenge to defend.
Oh, yeah.
Next time you pick a movie that you really go, and you can really go for the jugular, because we'd love to have you back.
Oh, I'd love to come back. This was so much fun.
All right. And with that, we're all at a show, but we hope you'll join us next time as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
What, Ben? You sandbagging son of a bitch.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.